If you're dealing with back pain and you love training, you've probably been told one of two things: either decrease your training intensity, or even worse, stop training altogether, or strengthen your core and hope for the best. And that's not working for you because that actually doesn't address the problem. The goal is never to remove training, it is to increase our body's capacity to tolerate it. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through what I would typically give someone who is dealing with back pain and who loves training, who wants to stay in the gym. Keep in mind, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Assessment matters, but the principles still apply here. So this is what I would typically give when I am dealing with this constraint. Let's break it down. So the first thing we're gonna start off here is with some soft tissue work. Now, a lot of people really look down on a foam roller. There's honestly nothing magic about it, but it's not entirely useless either. What it's gonna do, it's gonna cause a temporary decrease in muscle tension. So it kind of gives us this window of opportunity. We could start to move a little bit more freely and regain a little bit more range of motion when we move on to the second part. Now, a lot of muscles that I like to roll out are the glutes, the adductors, and the lats, for example. These are great because they attach along the ribs. They also attach along the pelvis as well too. So we're gonna need the pelvis and the ribs to move well when we start to do complex movements in the gym. So by reducing this muscle tone, it's gonna allow us to move a little bit more smoothly. All right, step number 2 is gonna be restore range of motion. Now, when we are dealing with pain, a lot of the time, there is a pressure distribution problem in the body. So a lot of pressure is just being placed on one spot, and that's probably the spot that you are dealing with right now. So in this phase, what we're gonna be doing is we are going to restore our body's capacity to redistribute stress a little bit more evenly in the body, so you can now offload a little bit of that stress that's being placed on whatever area you are dealing with right now. So examples of exercises that I love to use are sideline step overs. These are great because they really open up the pelvis. I like to do around 1 to 2 sets of 8 for these. Now, I also love some arm bar screwdrivers. This is really gonna open up the ribs, it's gonna open up the upper back, it's gonna open up the space between the shoulder blades and the rib cage as well too. This is great for anyone dealing with some shoulder issues. Another move I really love as well is an arm bar roll. So what we're gonna be doing in this movement is you're actually gonna be rolling one vertebrae at a time as you rotate, so getting some nice rotational components in the spine. We're gonna be using breathing to open up the body as well too. So inhale in the static positions and exhale as you move. Now keep in mind, these exercises are always assessment dependent. So I'm just showing you examples, not prescriptions. So next up we have dynamic activation. So this is gonna do a number of things. First, it's gonna activate our body's nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system. It's gonna allow us to prepare our bodies for training on a brain level. And it's also gonna allow us to use some of the range of motion that we restored from the previous phase beforehand. So some movements I love to do with this are reverse lunge cross connects. We could also do some inchworms. I also love using bear crawls as an example as well too. So we're just engaging upper and lower body elements here, integrating the body as a whole system. Next, I love to work some elastic components. So we're gonna be doing stuff like pogo hops, some skips. We could also be doing some jumps as well too, depending on whatever it is you are preparing for in the gym that day. And there are different ways we can always modify these exercise intensities. So for someone who's dealing with pain, we could perhaps do something like a band assisted pogo hop. We can decrease the height of the A skips. Once again, we are just restoring our body's ability to tolerate stress and load again. So the sequencing really matters in this. If you're dealing with a little bit more pain, you could always take a band to offload some body weight and do some band assisted pogo hops as well too. Elasticity is really important because it's gonna allow our body to control how we absorb force, but not only absorb it, how we propel it back upwards as well too. Now, pogo hops or any kind of hopping or skipping, for example, is great in a rehab process because it restores our body's ability to handle forces again, to absorb that force, but not only absorb it, to actually take that force that we absorbed and redistribute a little bit more evenly in the body as well too. So very important in the rehab process. You know, always modify based on the intensity of the pain that you are dealing with. This should take anywhere between 15 minutes. You know, I don't want you to spend like 30 minutes warming up before your sessions. I see people doing that. Honestly, you could run through 1, 2, and 3 in around 15 minutes. All right, next up is gonna be the really fun part. We're gonna be doing block A, block B, block C. Then we're gonna end off with some conditioning. I'm going to erase this board because I got a ton of exercises that I'm gonna write here. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff here. So in the first block, A1, A2, A3, I love to work with supersets. Honestly, it just speeds things up a little bit more. It gives a little bit more rest time for the muscle groups as well. So if you start off with a hinge and then you run through these 2 exercises here, by the time you get back to that hinge, that muscle group got a sufficient amount of rest. So I really love using triceps for that reason, and it's just faster as well too. So the first thing we're gonna start off here is with a unilateral hinge. You'll see a lot of unilateral and alternating movements here. This goes back to the pressure distribution. So like I was saying before, often when we are dealing with pain, there is a pressure mismanagement problem in the body. By utilizing both unilateral and alternating, we are closing down one side, opening up the other. We're not closing both sides down. That's just going to increase pressure on the system, which may increase someone's pain. So for the first exercise here, we'll do a unilateral hinge. There's many ways we can do this. So for the unilateral hinge, I love to start someone off with a hand-supported 1-arm deadlift, Romanian deadlift. So the hand support's just gonna provide a little bit more stability so we're not wobbling all over the place. And then, a couple of cues I like to give here is kick that leg back, reach that dumbbell down towards the foot. And a lot of people experience very, very little symptoms when they're performing that exercise versus doing like a bilateral deadlift, for example. Next up, we're gonna go to a alternating horizontal press pattern. So what this could look like is a, hook line alternating chest press here. Another great movement. I like using hook line just because by placing the feet on the bench, it's just gonna decrease the amount of arch that you have on your back. And once again, alternating, we're closing down one side while opening up the other, redistributing pressure throughout the body and not closing both sides down like on a typical bench press. Now, FYI, I say like closing stuff down as if it's a bad thing. It's not. It's just, once again, when we're dealing with pain, we just want to decrease the amount of pressure that's being placed on that joint or area that you're dealing with here. All right. Third here, we're going to be doing a unilateral vertical pull. So I love to do stuff like a oblique sit lat pull down, for example. Great exercise to get a nice stretch out of the ribs. We could also do something like a half kneeling reciprocal row. This is another great exercise. You're working a little bit of the core as well too. We're working some thoracic mobility as we are reaching with that opposite arm. So another movement to really regain some of that lost movement from when we're dealing with pain while also strengthening at the same time. I would run through this for around 2 rounds. We could work with repetitions anywhere between 10 to 12 reps for each. Once again, it's very, very dependent on the pain levels that someone's dealing with, but I typically stick around 10 to 12 reps. And we'll keep things at around an RPE 7. We're not going to muscle failure here because once again, we're just going to increase the amount of tension on the body, which may not be really favorable for someone who is dealing with back pain right now. Next up, we're gonna go to a unilateral squat. So I love to use something like a front foot elevated split squat. Great exercise. Once again, we're just going to increase a little bit of the range of motion in the hip level here by placing the foot on the step. It's actually going to offload some of the body weight that's being placed on the body as a whole. So if you were doing something like a rear foot elevated split squat, that's actually going to increase the amount of pressure that's being placed on your body. Once again, not a bad thing, but if you're dealing with pain, may not be the best place to start. Next, B2, alternating horizontal pull. We could do something here like a half kneeling reciprocal row. Great exercise. We're going to be starting in a half kneeling position, just regaining our ability to manage forces appropriately. So we'll start a little bit more ground-based stuff. Then we could even eventually do something more like a split stance. horizontal pull, reciprocal row as well too. That's going to be working the lats, also some nice thoracic rotation on the ribs. And then we're going to go to a unilateral vertical push. I love something like a oblique sit row. Fantastic exercise. You're going to feel a ton of core with this. You're also going to feel a nice stretch in the ribs as you're pressing up. Inhale with the palm facing you on the way down. Exhale, turning the palm out. Once again, this has to do with the pressure distribution in the body. You're actually going to feel the backside of your body opening up as you turn the palm towards you, versus if your palm was not facing you. So that's a really nice one as well too. Once again, we're going to keep things around 10 to 12 reps for 2 rounds here. Next up, we have arm farm, what everyone's been waiting for. So we're gonna do biceps here. There are many ways we could go about this, honestly. I love to use chest supported in this case. The reason why is that by placing our chest, it's actually gonna close down the front side and allow air to fill up the back side. So giving a little bit more space in the back. So something like a spider curl works really well for this. You could do preacher curl as well too. Triceps, we're gonna be doing a hook line tricep extension. So we're gonna be laying on the back. You could do alternating, you could do bilateral, whatever you prefer. This is another great exercise, hook line position, just keeping that back nice and flat on the ground usually feels pretty good. And then last here, abs, we could go with a classic dead bug variation. So we could do something like a cross connect dead bug. Great exercise to engage the core. Once again, integrating upper and lower body extremities. We could also do something like a Swiss ball dead bug, another great exercise, just because regular dead bugs, a lot of people do them wrong. They're arching their back and stuff, or even worse, some people are doing like bird dogs, they're arching their back and they're really not getting that core contraction that we're really looking for. Not that bird dogs are horrible, they're just executed very poorly, in my opinion. Finally, we're gonna end off with some tempo intervals. The reason why I like to give tempo intervals is because we're gonna be working at around 70% of our max for this. So we're not going all out. By going all out, probably not the best pace to start here. Once again, just going back to the fact that it's gonna increase the amount of tension in our body. It's gonna allow us to utilize a lot of muscle groups that may already be very, very stiff since you're dealing with pain. So temporal intervals are just gonna improve your body's conditioning, but not really overdo it, so to speak. So I like to do something like 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off for 6 to 8 rounds, depending on what your conditioning level is at. Air bike works really, really well for this because we're integrating both upper and lower body components. So we're getting some nice rotation of the ribs, and we're also getting some leg work done as well too. So that concludes our session for the day, guys. I hope you found this useful. As you can see, we could still keep training during the rehab process. In fact, I prefer to use training as the healing tool. All right, the goal is not to decondition. We want to still keep progressing our fitness during the rehab process. Now, if you're someone who's looking for something a little bit more structured, before you head into your training sessions, I actually recently put together a full body guided warm-up sequence, which you will see in the description below. This will work for anyone who is dealing with any kind of pain. Maybe you're someone who is just very, very stiff and just looking to loosen up and feel good before your session. This is definitely for you. So link is in the description below, and I'll see you on the next one.